Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Doctors of Running podcast, where we, a group of doctors of physical therapy, discuss the art and the science of the stuff we're putting on our feet. Today's episode is powered by Rabbit. Thanks so much to Rabbit for being our new podcast sponsor for 2026. Today, we've got an awesome guest with us today, Jenn St. Jean, who I met in the local running scene and who has just been such a great resource for me as I've gotten into Masters track the past couple of years. Jenn, thank you so much for joining us and welcome to the podcast.
Thanks so much for having me.
So just to give you all a little background on Jenn, Jenn is a mom of 3. She's coached all ages, including high school and college, and is currently a coach at Darien High School here in Connecticut. She's a researcher at Columbia Presbyterian Hospital, also a pretty much lifelong runner. I don't know how old you were when you started, but her lifetime PRs are 4:19 for the 1500 and 2:08 for the 800, which is incredible. And she currently runs for the Central Park Track Club Tracksmith and is an alum of UMass Amherst. So Jenn, again, thanks so much for joining us. Today, I'm really hoping to give our listeners a lot of information about Masters track and field, how to get involved, who it's for. It's not just for people 40 and older, it's for younger people too. And then talk a little bit about spring training and shoe rotations, because we can't get away with a podcast episode here at DOR without talking a little bit about running shoes. So Jenn, can you tell us about your running background? And let's just start with, when did you start running and how did you get into competing?
So I started running in the fall of 8th grade. A friend of mine was going to cross-country practice, and I had joined her that day. I think I probably only had a couple of practices under my belt before my very first competition. So I guess I've been a competitor pretty much since day one. It was not something that I sort of like sought out to do. And in fact, I had no idea what cross country was in the 8th grade, and I had heard it on the loudspeaker, and I had no idea what it was. So I asked her. She said, we just go out for runs. I still couldn't comprehend why people would do this, but I asked if I could join her, and so the rest is, as you say, history.
I love it. Yeah. I think it's so funny that you would think, I think a lot of people think to themselves, why would anyone just want to go out for a run? And then you try it and fall in love with it, of course. So you raced in college, so you must have had a pretty good high school racing career. Did you start out at mid-distance, or did you experiment with different distances in high school and college? Tell us a little bit about your high school and collegiate racing.
Sure. Well, I think in the 8th grade, it was sort of like the perfect introduction because our races were just a little bit more than a mile. And I found that distance very doable. When I got to high school for cross country, they trained for the 5K already. And that was a huge shock to my system. And so I ended up basically flopping out of my freshman year of cross country. I ended up with like patella tendonitis because I went straight into it. I didn't really have like a foundation from the summer, and the distance was it was twice as long as I was used to running, and it was just too much for my body. So then when I started indoor track that winter, I went over to the coach and said, I was struggling in the fall. I seem to have that injury behind me now. I went to PT. And I said, I'm not sure that distance running is really for me. And so he had me train with the sprinters, although he knew that like my primary event would be middle distance. So I really focused on speed, drills, endless amount of like just coordination, strength. And I don't think I really went out for distance runs so much. But basically ran the middle distance off of strength.
That's very lucky that you encountered that PT so early in your running career who gave you that strength and speed base, which of course pays off tremendously when it comes to the 800.
So at that point, I pretty much, in outdoor track, the coach my freshman year said, I really think you should try the mile. So I did sort of reluctantly. I set the freshman mile record for the school, and then declared that I would never run it again.
And that's not actually what happened, though, is it?
No. But the feeling is still real. Like I still I know I run the mile, and but I have a strong dislike for that event. Like I really do prefer the 800. So
I agree with you. I never ran the mile in high school because I just felt it was too long. I didn't want to do that many laps on the track. So now when I run it, I like it as a challenge, but it definitely isn't my favorite distance either. I definitely prefer the 8 as well.
Yeah. So I focused on the 800 throughout high school, and the 1,000, of course, for indoor. And then when I went to college, I was an 800 runner and a 4x800 runner. That was my primary event. I also ran cross country. That was a 5K, and then championships were 6K. But she knew that I was an 800 runner. So I was always sort of like the back end of the team. I was a walk-on. So all the recruited freshmen actually ended up leaving my freshman year. So I was the only freshman distance runner, mid-distance runner to stay. So that was kind of an interesting dynamic. So my freshman year, I was probably like 12th to 14th on the cross-country team. And then each year I just kind of kept moving up little by little. In my senior year, I was number 2 on the team. And
that's amazing.
Yeah, especially like given my background and not wanting to run distance,
Right.
I really just try to embrace it and see it as sort of strength for indoor and outdoor. And so that year running that well, the indoor and outdoor seasons were also the best of my college career. And I was a conference champion in the 1,000. I was runner-up in the mile, and we won our 4x8 in the conference championship. So,
wow!
And then we won the overall team title for indoor track that year as well. So
that's incredible. What an end to your collegiate career.
Yeah.
Rabbit Apparel is the presenting partner of this podcast, and they have some of our favorite things, from their tights to their long sleeves to their performance gear for the summer and short sleeve stuff. So if you want to check out any of their running apparel, it lasts forever. It's super comfortable and it performs really well. You can go to runningrabbit.com, and then you can use the code DORMarch10 to get 10% off your order during the month of March. So that's DORMarch10 to get 10% off your order.
So a lot of runners have trouble with the transition from high school to collegiate racing. Did you find that it was difficult to make that transition, or do you feel like you were pretty well prepared for that? How did your collegiate coaches kind of help the freshman group transition to probably higher distance or higher weekly mileage and just more intense training? Mm-hmm. That's really interesting. Is including aqua running as cross training something that's normally done on collegiate teams now? Yeah, I didn't think so. Hmm. Yeah, I mean, we all know the importance of cross training, especially easy cross training for recovery, just to do something lower impact. I definitely use the bike as my way of recovering from running, but the pool can be another great way for people. So I think as long as runners are doing something to offload their bodies, that's probably the key. Um, Maybe just making the whole team get in the pool and actually recover is a more effective way than telling someone to, oh, go get on the stationary bike or the elliptical, and maybe they still train too hard. But super interesting.
Yeah.
So after college, oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, like, and we were all in there sort of, I guess, suffering together. We kind of looked at it that way because it was freezing cold. It was really early in the morning. UMass is in this like Arctic tundra. So doing that in the wintertime and coming out with wet hair was a bit of an adjustment, but it created a nice team bond, I guess.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. All the former swimmers, including myself, who are listening to this are like, yeah, I know the feeling of going outside with wet hair and it's only, 6:30 in the morning and you've already done your first workout, but runners definitely aren't used to that. Good way to suffer together. Um, you raced a little bit after college, right? Could you tell us a little bit about that and how that went and just how you found that transition from college to post-collegiate?
So I graduated UMass with a degree in exercise science, but I found out pretty quickly that there weren't a lot of jobs for people with just an undergraduate degree in exercise science. You really needed a master's. And financially, I wasn't in a position to go and pay for and get a master's in exercise science. So while I was sort of in limbo, a coach from the Boston Athletic Association had reached out to my coach and asked if I would consider continuing running in Boston at a club level. He knew I was from Boston originally, so he knew that like I'd probably be going home and that I could commute into the city to go to training and train with the BAA. So I didn't really have another plan. And the goal was to get me working at one of the running stores. So I worked in a running store in Boston and then ran for that club. I'm kind of like, I grew up in central Massachusetts, which is not terribly close to Boston. I mean, it's close enough, but certainly it's kind of like being in, Fairfield County or Westchester County and going into New York City. It's just, it's a hard hassle getting through the traffic and whatnot. So another friend had said that there was another group that was training in like the Newton Wellesley area, which was much closer to where I was living, and said that I should talk to the head coach there and that he was forming a middle distance running group that might work for me really well. So I didn't stay at the BAA for much longer than just my first cross country season with them, and transferred over to this other team, which was under Central Mass Striders, but we had a small little group that was like a carve out from that, which we called Reebok Boston. So our team was sponsored by Reebok. They paid for gear and travel, and yeah.
That's awesome. So what was the racing circuit like then? I mean, we're so lucky to have so many great mates in the Boston, New York City area. Did you mainly race in the Northeast or did you go all over?
So for the most part, what's now known as the Battle Road Track Club Twilight Series used to be another just Northeastern Twilight Series is what it was called. Back in the day. And so we utilized those meets. And then there was another circuit, which was called the Canadian American Tour. And so we would race in Boston, we would race in Maine, and then a couple races up in Canada, and then back down to Maine, and then finish up in Boston. So it was kind of like a summer-long series that we did. And that's really where my best times came from, was when we came back down from racing in Canada. My final 2 races in Boston is where I ran 2:08.
That's amazing. What age were you when you ran that?
23.
Nice. And yeah, just having what a great opportunity to have so many meets in a relatively close geographical region. You're not flying over all over the country to have good competition, and you're racing a lot, and that's the key to getting faster.
Yeah, it was, something that a lot of people have a hard time doing, which is racing and then resting and then racing and then resting. They feel like that they have to do something in between. But in fact, just resting and allowing the body to super compensate is the best recovery.
100%. Yeah. And I am the same way. And that's how bike racing was. You train up to a point until the meet of your season, and then it's just race and recover, race and recover. That's all you can do. And the fitness you're gaining is from the racing, not trying to add in additional workouts on top of all of that racing.
Yeah, it's a philosophy that's really hard for current generation of runners to accept.
Do you find that that's more prevalent in distance runners? Do you think that shorter distance runners do better at resting, or do you just find that no matter what distance someone races, they have more trouble actually taking proper rest during race season?
I don't know. I mean, I feel like so often in track culture, the distance runners sort of make fun of the sprinters, that they're just like always sort of like laying about, and that they have these really long recoveries in between their repetitions, and the distance runner will be doing like 2400s, and the sprinter's like, oh, I've got 2 300s to do today, and I can't believe I have to run that far. And but it's obviously about the intensity. I feel like sprinters honor the intensity much better than distance runners do.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree with that. Yeah, I was at the indoor track yesterday, and I had some broken 800s to do, and there were some distance guys who I think were doing 20 by 400 just based on how long they were out there. But, they're doing jog recoveries, and I've got 10-minute recoveries between sets, and it's like, well, this is what I need, and it's different than what they need, but we're all just out here trying to get fitter, but different intensities require different recovery lengths for sure.
Yeah. And I think for middle distance runners, where you could be either top down, so maybe you're more distance, or bottom up, maybe you're more sprint. I think that impacts the decision on, should I be jogging this recovery? Should I be walking this recovery? Should I just lie down flat on my back, recover? I think where you come from probably impacts that more.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Muscle fiber type. And the 800 is such an interesting event in that so many different types of athletes can excel at it. So if you're a more speed-based 800 runner who would also run a fast 400, then your training is absolutely going to be different than somebody who can run an equally fast mile as they could, comparatively speaking, as an 800. So now I know you took a break from racing when you started your family. So how long were you not racing? Were you running at all in that time? And then what got you back into racing, and what brought you to masters racing?
So I never stopped training, but I just needed a break from competing. So I didn't really even want to do like a local road race or things of that nature. But somehow or another, I would always, especially knowing my background, I would always get pulled into like a Chase Corporate Challenge, or when I worked at PIMCO Funds, we had a corporate Olympics, and they knew that I was a 1,500-meter runner previously, and they were like, will you please go and represent the United States offices? And I was like, okay. So like it would always sort of like suck me back in for like small moments of time. So I don't ever feel like I really had like a full clean sweep of not doing it, but it was more like a dabble here, a dabble there, just to, I don't know, I guess for office water cooler talk, I guess. But in 2013, I had some health issues, and after that was over, I just kind of like, I didn't quite feel like an athlete anymore, even though I had been sort of running and like going out for a jog here or there. And I felt like the only way that I could get back to feeling like myself was to start competing again. During some of those in-between times, I had connected with the Westchester Track Club. And so I started doing some runs with them. And I was, I guess, probably 38 at the time. And so I said to the head coach there, I was like, I had a couple of really good races that weren't too far off of some of my lifetime PRs. Maybe I could be faster as a master. And he's like, I really like the intent of that. He's like, but knowing, where you came from, that's going to be really hard to do. But anyway, I just kind of always kept that in mind, and at least achieving the same feeling, the same fitness level that I felt back in my early 20s is what has sort of been the driver in feeling that good again.
Yeah, it's like a return to yourself.
Yeah.
Now, I know you're being very modest, but you've had quite the success in masters racing. So I know last year you won world gold in the 1,500 in indoor. Is that right?
That is, yeah.
Yes. And can you tell us how that race went?
Well, it wasn't the best lead up to that race. I mean, I guess that's probably a true story for a lot of people. I had ended up like 4 weeks earlier than that. I was supposed to run in the New Balance Grand Prix meet, but I got flu A or flu B, I don't remember. And it really knocked me on my butt. So after that, I was really having like a hard time with my aerobic capacity. So I really had to just buckle down and focus on training and not do any races because I knew that I wouldn't be able to put in the work if I was racing also. I guess that's one of the things, again, as you get older, like you really have to respect the time that you need to recover in between races. I didn't think I could race myself into fitness for the 1,500. Like, I think that's just, it's really a labor of love. Like you have to do the right number of repeats. And so that's what I did. I didn't do any races leading up to it. I just trained. So for 4 weeks, I buckled down and I was like, okay, well, let's see how this goes. And I would say about halfway through that race, I kind of questioned whether or not I was going to be able to see it through. And then I just said to myself, I was like, well, how bad do you want it? And that little mind shift was really all I needed to pick up the pace and take off and just not look back. Like I had to make the move then. I couldn't like wait for it. So, yeah.
That's awesome. Well, congratulations. That is quite a comeback to have been sick in what the New Balance race was at the beginning of February, and then to come back and be in top shape for Worlds, 6-7 weeks later. That's huge.
Yeah.
And you've also raced like a pretty wide range of distances in the past couple of years, right? Like you've raced cross country. I originally met you at a half marathon. So what got you, the middle distance runner who hates running the mile, to do cross country and jump into a few half marathons here and there?
So I think this sort of goes back to, you can even look at like my senior year of college. So in the summer, sort of laying the foundation, and in the fall, running those cross country races where I really feel like you get a level of strength running cross country because the ground is not forgiving, right? There's no bounce. So you can't wear like a super shoe, for example, and, get a recoil off the ground on cement, right? The ground literally absorbs all of your energy. And so having to push off of like a negative return, it builds strength, right? And so then you take that cross country training and then you apply it to the track and it makes you very springy.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm trying to remember the name of the American who won gold in the men's 400 at the Olympics, but he, credited his high school coach in making him run cross country, which he said gave him the strength to be such a gritty 400 runner. Yeah. I loved that interview.
Yeah. So, I find that there's like a time for that. And even when I ran for Reebok Boston, we would go out to Lincoln Woods and Walden Pond, and we would run 12 to 14 miles. This is the middle distance crew, but it was at a very conversational pace. So we would be out there for like a couple of hours, just jogging gently in the woods. And so those sort of like long, comfortable training sessions, they're very therapeutic mentally, physically, leaving those long runs and genuinely feeling very drained, but like in a good way. It just sort of stuck with me that this is just part of the process. So I kind of, in the fall, decided that like I was running 13 anyway. And I used to joke that I would run 13.0 so that my Strava would never say 13.1 on a training run because that just seems silly. So then I was like, okay, well, what if you just go and sign up for a local half marathon and just run the 13.1 and then at least get, like a real number, real time, real credit, not just a training run, right? So that sort of became a more recent thing that I've done.
Yeah, it's fun to get out there and just be in a race environment and test yourself rather than going out and doing a long run by yourself. And I mean, you ran a pretty fast half, right? I think I remember you said that was a PR for you.
Yeah. My PR is a 122 at Ridgefield, which is kind of crazy because it's notoriously hilly and windy.
Yes.
But also I feel like I run really well on hills. And maybe that goes back to some of that cross country training and strength that I build in the fall that like I do really like. Flat isn't always easier. It may seem like it might be, but I think the change in terrain is sort of better on your body. Though I will say after Ridgefield for about 4 days, my right hip flexor was a little angry at me, but it passed. I gave myself the recovery it needed and it went away. But it was that hilly.
It is a hilly course. And what's funny is they say that it's a, rolling course, but anytime in Connecticut someone says rolling, it's actually quite hilly. And if someone says it's a flat course, it has moderate hills.
Yes.
Yes. Now you've won a number of national masters titles too, right? I just, so our listeners know, it's very impressive what you've accomplished. So if you could share that with our listeners, what have your top results been at national championships as a master?
I wish I could share my accolades, but honestly, like anything that's happened like 24 hours ago, I don't even think about it really. So I know what like my best times of all time are, but honestly, I can't remember from year to year. what my times are. The only thing that I can say is that like something that I've grown to appreciate is my mile track record history, even though, again, I don't really care for that distance very much. But is that over the last 36 years, I've run basically plus or minus 10 seconds on a 5-minute mile consistently. I've broken 5 as a master. Not every time, but that's okay. There are other years that I've come close, but I didn't do it. But I like the plus or minus 10. Like I think on a mile, that's pretty consistent over a very, very long period of time.
Oh, absolutely. That is incredible consistency and quite fast. Well, since Jenn won't tell us how many national titles she has, I'm pretty sure she has several in both in cross country, right? And on the track. Yeah.
Cross country track. I think I have some like podium finishes at the USATF 10K race, James Joyce Ramble, another one that is notoriously rolling hills. So
you have range. There's no question. So I met Jenn at this Ridgefield Half Marathon. I had known that she was a local, legend in mid-distance racing. But I didn't know anything about mid-distance track racing as a master's athlete. I had always, that's what I did in high school. And I had always thought it would be fun to get back into it at my age, but I didn't know that there were all of these really incredible opportunities for people who are out of college. So Jenn, to her credit, really has been a great resource for me just in helping me understand how to find meets and, knowing what the good ones are to do. So just briefly, Jenn, because there's so much more I want to talk to you about. If somebody was interested in getting into master's track, what should they know in terms of how old do you have to be, where to find meets, if you wanted to find a training group, how could you do that, and anything else you think our listeners might need to know to get started?
Sure. I mean, there are different age groups for masters, whether you're talking about road racing or cross country, and then for track and field. Track and field has actually more recently embraced welcoming the much younger age groups to our championship meets. You could even see, as young as 25, 30, 35, showing up to the Masters Championships. And the reason for that is because just trying to have a space for athletes who maybe aren't training for the Olympics to have a place to compete, because the only other alternative is qualifying for USAs, and you basically have to be a world-class athlete to make those qualifying standards for USAs. So that leaves a large set of the population without a championship to train and compete for. So I think it's really great in opening that up and also inviting them, allowing them to see what older athletes are capable of still doing. So I think that's the first thing to know, is that USA Track and Field is very welcoming of all ages. The second thing is that there are, for track and field, again, there are a lot of meets that are listed on a website called Direct Athletics. And so they'll list high school races, college races, and then an open category race. Sometimes races are listed as just collegiate, but you might be able to, as a club athlete, participate in that as well. I'll specifically focus on some of the Division III schools, might say closed for college, but if you reach out to the meet director and say, hey, I've run XYZ for a time, would it be possible for me to race in your meet? And as long as it's not one of their championships, like their conference championship or any of those kinds of meets, they're usually very willing to allow open athletes to compete. I think joining a club, that's how I started, was very beneficial because the club coaches obviously know where and what races you can become a part of. A very large club like Central Park Track Club, I mean, we have open elite athletes, we have Olympians on our team, we have 80 and 90-year-olds on our team. And what's interesting is that when you show up to a practice, you are broken out by ability, not by gender or age. So you always have people to run with the same ability as you, which is very nice. So you end up developing these little training pods, and it's a very welcoming community.
I've always admired, I mean, the Central Park Track Club is huge. You always see so many of your athletes at races, but you all also seem to like genuinely enjoy being around each other, which, isn't always the case with amateur teams. So yeah, it looks like a great group. I'm so glad that you have your teammates to train with and race with.
But I think part of it too is like as we get older, is like having the social aspect of it as well. Like to be able to, whether it's like it's a community, and so you're talking with these people not just at practice, but outside of practice, or maybe you're traveling with your teammates to some of these USATF meets, nationals that will take place throughout different parts of the country. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's why so many people run, is not just for the exercise, but it is for the community that comes along with it. So I want to move on and just talk to you a little bit, like let's put your coaching and athlete hats on. And you see you're running from both sides. You're a lifelong athlete, but you've also coached collegiate and high school. And do you coach adults too, or just younger people?
So it changes over time. So right now I do have one adult athlete that I'm coaching. I'm not taking on clients because it's a lot with coaching the high school team. But at any point in time, I would have like 4 or 5 adults that I'm training. I don't advertise. It's just they've sought me out and said, hey, would you mind helping me? Sometimes I'll help people for a short period of time and encourage them to then go and join a club, because it's great having a one-on-one coaching relationship, but I think most people get so much more out of having training partners and community. So like, it's kind of funny. Like, I mean, I'll start with them and I'll help them gain the confidence, but eventually I want them to leave me. Like I don't want to keep them as a lifelong client. I just want to help them get out the door and then find that community that works for them.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess my first question would be, have you seen big changes in high school and collegiate racing now compared to when you were competing? How has the training changed? How has coaching changed? Now that you've seen it from both sides, what do you wish maybe your coaches had done differently when you were in high school or in college?
I think for the most part, kids are definitely starting much younger. I think some of the success that you're seeing at the high school level at a really high end, those kids might have already been training for, 5 years. And now they're being super successful. But I think there's always like a 10-year period. And I don't necessarily think starting younger is beneficial. I think high school should be about growth and development for both boys and girls. We can see developmental issues by them training too hard or too intensely. I think there are also psychological effects of training too young and having that much pressure on them. And this isn't like a general blanket statement across every student, every athlete. I'm sure there are some that the training is perfectly justifiable. It's not causing them any additional mental anguish. But I would say on the majority, it does. So, people will be the first to, chime in, well, not my child, not my athlete. But that will always remain to be seen much later down the road. Like, how do they acclimate to college, and are they successful in college? Certainly for female athletes, did their bones develop properly? Especially for female athletes, we're at the struggle between the ages of 18 and 22, where our body's trying to form its full bone density, and yet we're trying to do something that's the opposite of that, which is, training our faces off, and the body simply can't do both at the same time. So I would be more in favor of a softer approach for high school athletes, in allowing their bodies to physiologically develop and setting a good foundation, kind of like what I had, where, we focused on strength, speed, biomechanics, all of the foundational stuff in high school, and your times will improve, but maybe you're not the high school standout that is getting an NIL deal. So then on the college level, I think they're also performing really well, but that's definitely feeding off of high school phenoms. And so, college is also a very tricky time, because truly, it's supposed to be something that is in addition to your education, not in place of your education. So I think there's a balance that needs to be struck there as well, between, again, training so hard that you can't focus on your academics, and also being successful, because, it is fun to be a conference champion. It's fun to make it to a national championship, but also know that that's not everything. Because like me, I was consistently running between 212 and 215 in college. And then I left the college scene, and now I'm running 208. So, and my bones were fully formed, and I was stronger, and I was faster. I didn't suffer from a lot of injuries. I still don't suffer from a lot of injuries. I'm currently on 331 weeks of a streak on Strava. But I also take 50 days off a year. So my streak is not never stop running, but I've just been able to consistently train. And so even when I've taken breaks over the summertime, it might be at like the beginning of the week, and then I start at the end of the following week. And so I still have a streak, but it's not because I didn't take time off.
Right. And I think you hit the nail on the head. One, being able to train consistently is the number one factor for improvement, but also not getting injured. But two, there's so much talk about, okay, how can we help high school female athletes in particular be healthier and be at lower risk of injury, RED-S, eating disorders? And I think one of the best things that coaches can do that's not invasive of people's privacy is focusing on strength, biomechanics, emphasizing the importance of proper fueling, not making their athletes weigh in, and encouraging all athletes to check in with their doctors so that their doctors can be in charge of making sure that somebody is menstruating regularly and all of their blood markers are normal. But I think as high school coaches, and as you're limited in what you can talk to your athletes about, just focusing on the basic strength, mechanics, a solid, consistent base of training is the best way to set them up for success.
For sure.
So you're a coach. If you could give the parents of high school runners one tip that you wish they knew about run training, what would it be?
It's really hard because, currently we've had a foot of snow on the ground. Most of the paths that are shoveled sort of are similar to an Arctic luge, not so much, concrete underneath where it was shoveled. So the roads are still narrowed. So running on the road is not really safe. We don't have treadmills at the high school. We have bikes and ellipticals. And we have limited hallway space and limited gym space that we can use. And yet I'll have some parents say, please don't let my child run outside. It's too cold. And I am the first to say I would never make your child run outside when it's 0 degrees outside. We'll find other things that we can do. And then I have other parents saying, you're not running my child hard enough. Let this child go outside and run in 0 degree temperature. Again, having a physiology background, it makes having those parent input makes it really, really challenging, especially as a team. I think, the students probably need to communicate better with their coaches, have better communication. The first thing that I always say to the kids when they come up to me to get their assignments for the day is, how is everyone feeling? Which is an unusual thing for coaches to ask. Usually it's, this is what we're going to do. But I have like 1,000 things that I could go to in my mind at like the snap of a finger of what we could do if it comes back with, I'm really, really sore today, coach. I have no idea why. Or I didn't sleep well last night. Or I was up, until 2 a.m. studying for midterms. I really believe in the whole athlete. So having the parents sort of say, do this, don't do that, makes it really, really challenging. Because they're obviously sharing some of those ideas with the kids, and then the kids start to lose trust in the coach. So I think it's better that if there are questions, that the parents should talk to the questions with their kids and have their kids ask the questions with the coach, and improving those kinds of relationships rather than I don't know, coming directly and bypassing the child altogether.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, teenagers are notorious for not being able to regulate their body temperature well. So if you're a parent insisting that your child go out and run in 0 degree weather, is that child going to just go out and run in shorts because that's what they think they should wear for that temperature? There's so many other safety factors involved in telling minors to go out and run in dangerous conditions.
For sure.
So one more question about training, and then I want to move on to shoes. So as a lifelong racer, how has your training changed over the years? Like now compared to 10 years ago, compared to when you were in college? What factors have become more important in your training, and which ones have become less important as you've gotten older?
I feel like my training has been fairly consistent over the last 37 years. It hasn't really changed too much. I mean, I obviously was a very low mileage runner in high school. I was sort of a mid-mileage runner in college. I probably, again, became more of a seasonal mileage runner post-collegiately, where we trained heavy, long, and slow in the summer and fall, and then really cutting the mileage way, way down, and then just focusing on speed in the winter and spring. I think sometimes I also get sucked into the mileage culture and thinking that, I need to run more, or I need to run or hit a certain amount of mileage throughout the entire season. But I think from not hitting the times that I want to run the last few years, I realized that's not sustainable. And that I really needed to just really focus on the training theory that we discussed earlier, which is race, recover, race, recover. And that has produced much better results for me this indoor season in the 800 than more recently in the past. I think the other big training hack is like a workout might call for having 2 minutes rest in between. And those numbers are going to be based off of probably male Olympic times. And they're obviously running much faster. So the amount of rest that they need is probably 4 times of what they've just ran. But I'm much slower. And although I'm slower, it's still my all-out effort, same as that Olympian, which means that I need longer recovery in between my repetitions. I think honoring that as you get older will go a long way for making sure that you're hitting the paces that you want in a workout, not creating too much lactate if it's not a lactate tolerance workout. It's just really about being mindful about what the workout goals are. Are you trying to go lactate threshold? Are you trying to be tempo run? And just really honoring those numbers and those paces, those levels of lactate that are swimming through your blood. I think longer recovery between workouts in general, like numbers of days, maybe moving from a 7-day to a 10-day schedule or a 14-day schedule in your training, that can be beneficial. If a workout that an Olympian would do calls for 4 sets, maybe doing 3 sets, I think those are all, like, as you're continuing, is doing slightly less, but keeping the quality the same.
Those are all such great tips. And I think, talking about, okay, this workout is based off of what an Olympic level male would do, particularly when you're talking about the 800. The percent of contribution from anaerobic system versus aerobic system for guys running 143, that race is much more anaerobic than those of us running 220 or 225. So that means that our training has to be a little bit different and our reps and recovery have to be different, simply because the energy system demands are different due to the length of our race, the duration of our race, not the distance.
Absolutely. And also, I was doing some research the other day, and the age-old 60-40 for the 800 is probably more likely 70-30 for females.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, isn't that interesting? Yeah. So the last segment of this episode, of course, we're going to talk about shoes and shoe rotation. So I don't know if you're aware of this study from 2015. We'll drop the study link into the show notes. But basically, researchers found that runners who use more than one pair of shoes at a time during their training, which they termed parallel use, had a 38% lower risk of running-related injury. So basically, if you have a shoe rotation, if in a given week you run in more than one pair of shoes regularly, you have a significantly decreased risk of injury. And there aren't a whole lot of things that have been shown to reduce running-related injury, but having a shoe rotation is one of them. So, Jenn, I would love to know what shoes you run in, and do you subscribe to that idea that you need a shoe rotation, or have you, without knowing about that study, have you just found that alternating shoes is helpful for you?
I have a hard time with shoe math. And so I know that, apps like Strava allow you to track, which shoe you were wearing for which training run. I've never really gotten into adding that kind of data in. I do know from tracking that my shoes tend to only last about 300 miles, maybe slightly less than that. I'm predominantly a midfoot striker, so I'll wear out the front of the shoe, and the heels actually look brand new because I put almost no resistance or pressure on the back when I'm running. So I've just naturally changed my shoes faster than most people do. So I don't hold on to a shoe very long. And so I don't really rotate my training shoes, but it would be wrong to say that I don't rotate shoes because I have different shoes for different purposes. So,
in a given week,
rotate them, but
so like this week, I'm sure you've got some easy runs, maybe a workout, maybe a race. So like, what's your easy run shoe? What shoe would you wear to do like a tempo run? And what do you race in?
So right now I'm running in the Asics Gel Nimbus. So it's very neutral, very squishy. It really feels like I'm running on a little cloud. It's kind of on the heavier side, so I definitely feel like a little clunky in it. But it feels good when I'm out jogging. Like I can't feel the road, and I feel like there's enough cushioning between my foot and the pavement. So that's sort of my, I guess, general training shoe this week. I'll use the the Nike Streak Fly, for speed workouts at the Armory because we're not allowed to wear spikes during training sessions to preserve the track. I'm racing in the Nike Dragonfly. I've been wearing that one probably since the beginning. I've tried some of the other mid-distance shoes and they don't work for me. The ones with the pods in them, it makes a squeak as I turn. And I feel like it makes it sound like I'm a camel. And it's like clunk, 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 clunk. And I'm like, what is that noise? So I don't wear that one because it doesn't work for my biomechanics. I know people love it and their foot must just hit differently in the shoe, but I can't stand it. Other shoes that I have, the ASICS Magic Speed. So if I'm doing like longer reps, 1,000 meters, 12,000 or 1,200 meters worth of like interval reps, then I like something with like a little more sole. So that's like a 10K road racing shoe that I really like on the track for longer reps. I feel like the Streak Fly is too squishy for really long reps. It's not enough between me and the ground. I also use the Streak Fly for road mile races, which I love. And then the New Balance Super Comp. So if I'm going out and I'm going to do a tempo run on the road or a progression run, that one feels really light and there's a little bit of spring in it with the plate. So it feels good when I'm running a longer run, so like 9 or 10 miles, and I've got either a progression or a tempo built in.
Is it the Super Comp Elite or the Super Comp Trainer that you like?
It's a Super
Is it the
Comp
racing
Elite.
shoe?
No.
Oh, okay. Yeah, nice. And which Streak Fly do you have? The original version or version 2?
So I started off with the original version, which I have to tell you, it took me about 4 runs before I could get used to the squishiness. I still have that shoe. I don't use it very often, but sometimes I switch out and I will wear that one because it doesn't have a plate in it. But I've been wearing the newer one with a plate.
Yeah, and I like Streak Fly 1. I basically only really liked for hill sprints. It just felt too soft and like a little too loose in the upper for anything else. But yeah, version 2 is amazing. I raced a mile on the track in it, a 500. Yeah, if I'm not doing my workout in spikes, I'm either using Streak Fly 2 or Topo Cyclone 3. But Streak Fly 2 is, in my opinion, the best option for road miles, like hands down.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, Nike did a great job with that. And then when you've raced halves, do you wear the Nike SC Elite or do you have a different racing shoe that you like?
I wore the New Balance Super Comp.
Nice. Yeah. And do you know which version you have?
Okay, so I don't know which version it was, but it was like banana yellow. And it was more like,
and like a booty-like upper?
Yeah.
That's
I
version
really
3.
liked that shoe. That was a gem. The newer version I don't like as much. It feels firmer. It's less squishy. It feels wider. So I break out the version 3 if I have a half marathon race. Like it's almost like it's on its end of its life, and so I just save it for like race days. So
it's your golden shoe, literally.
Yeah.
I loved that shoe. I got more miles on that shoe than any other super shoe I've owned. I mainly used it for like long runs and workouts, but yeah, version 3 was the best version for me too. I think you and I probably have similar mechanics. If you like that shoe, and I don't like more recent versions of the SC Elite, you might like the On Cloudboom Echo 3. It has a very similar feeling midsole, and the fit is actually quite comfortable in the upper. A lot of people think On shoes are very narrow in the toe box, but this one actually is pretty roomy.
Good. I'll give that a try.
Yeah. So last question, what's coming up for you? Do you have any, I think you've got a race this week, right?
Yeah. So I just finished up the 4x4 Melrose Games yesterday.
Nice.
And that went pretty well. And so this Friday, my last race of the season is at Rutgers. Well, it's at the Armory, but it's the Rutgers Invitational. And so, yeah, I'm really excited to run one more 800 this season. And then I kind of have to put my racing on pause because all of the high school meets, the championships, it's a lot of standing on my feet. And I find the balance of those really long state championships and training doesn't work so great together. My legs feel really, really tired after coaching all day. So.
Oh, sure. Yeah. We've all got to figure out how to balance training, work, and life. And sometimes you just plan your races to fit around less busy times for work and life. And that's how you can get the best results.
Yeah,
well, Jenn, thanks so much for joining me today. I think our listeners will learn a lot about just a lot of things, Masters track, but also just training as, whether you're a high school athlete, collegiate, post-collegiate, or Masters, how to adjust your training, things to focus on. So thanks for taking the time to come on. Listeners, as always, we love to hear from you. Leave us a comment down below. Send us an email, doctorsofrunning@gmail.com. We love to hear from you. Thank you.